Hey, remember how I make political content sometimes? I've been making fun stuff for a little bit. We're gonna jump back into a little politics here and a lot of history. I have fun making the fun stuff and I don't plan on stopping with it, but there's a lot of stuff we gotta talk about here. I've talked about Israel and Palestine a lot. Dude, it is hot in here. I'm sorry. You're gonna have to hear my fan because, oh my god. It is hot in here for no reason. It's so cold outside. Why is it hot in here? I talked about Israel and Palestine a lot, but I think it would be best for a lot of you to get a full, coherent history of the matter, of Israel's genocidal tendencies. So this video is going to explore the history of the Israel and Palestinian conflict through a critical lens, arguing that the founding and expansion of Israel constitutes a project of settler colonialism that has employed acts of ethnic cleansing and meets the definition of a genocide. Just to read you the definition of genocide according to the UN, a genocide is defined as a crime committed with the intent to destroy a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group in whole or in part. It does not include political groups or so-called cultural genocide. So there goes your white genocide argument. But Israel undoubtedly fits that description if you've been paying any attention at all. To skip past that little intro, we're going to actually dive into the history now. So in the late 19th century, Zionism became a lot more popular. It was a national liberation movement about Jewish people returning to their homeland. The settler colonial ideology, facilitated by European powers, was, I'll read it word for word here, a land without a people for a people without a land. This was not a land without a people. It was not empty. It was inhabited by a majority Arab Palestinian population. This slogan was a myth used to justify displacement. In 1917 was the Balfour Declaration, a legitimate promise from the Great Britain to create a home for the Jewish people in the land of Palestine. A classic colonial maneuver. A European power promised a land that it did not own to a third party, without the consent of the indigenous Arab majority, over 90% of the population, by the way. It established a policy of preferential treatment for Zionist immigrants. Jewish immigrants developed the land, purchased property, and built institutions for a future state while facing Arab violence and rejectionism. Zionist organizations like Haganah, Irgun, and Lehi pursued a strategy of creating a Jewish majority state through increased immigration and land acquisition, often against the wishes of the native population, leading to rising tensions and revolts. Between 1947 and 1948, there was a UN partition plan. The Jewish community accepted the UN partition plan for two states. The Arab world and Palestinian leaders rejected it and launched a war of annihilation. The partition plan allocated 55% of the land to the Jewish state, which represented only 1/3 of the population and owned around 7% of the land. Palestinians saw it as the legitimization of the theft of their country. Now we're into part two, which is the probably most important part of the entire history of this conflict, not to delegitimize any other parts of this conflict. The Nakba. The 1948 war was titled the Israeli War of Independence, a desperate defensive war for survival against invading Arab armies. The refugee problem was a consequence of a war started by Arabs, with many fleeing due to orders from Arab leaders or to avoid the fighting. A war of expansion and ethnic cleansing known to Palestinians as the Nakba, which translates to catastrophe. Plan D was a systematic military strategy to depopulate Arab villages and secure the territory for the new state, or the Nakba. Approximately 700,000 Arabs left. Israel argues that there was no centralized expulsion order and that many left willingly. That is a blatant lie, and any historian who tells you that that is true is a blatant liar. Even historians who debunk that there's a genocide happening, and some of which are even pro-Israel, acknowledge the expulsions. These are very documented. And there was a systematic destruction of over 500 villages that prevented refugees from returning. This is the foundational act of displacement. Part 3, we're going to talk about the occupation and the peace process. You know the phrase from Ronald Reagan, the scariest thing that the government can say is, "I want to help"? The most frightening thing for Israel to say is, "We want peace." In 1967, there was a Six-Day War, a preemptive war for survival. The capture of the West Bank, Gaza, and Golan Heights was a defensive outcome. Offers were made to trade land for peace. This was the beginning of a military occupation that continues to this very day. It marked the start of a project to settle the captured territories with Israeli civilians, which is illegal under international law. Fourth Geneva Convention. So Judea and Samaria are the biblical heartland of the Jewish people. Settlements are for security and are legitimate communities that would be negotiated in a final status agreement. A deliberate strategy to colonize the West Bank, create facts on the ground, and make a contiguous Palestinian state impossible. The matrix of control, checkpoints, separate roads, the separation barrier, fragments Palestinian land and life. In 1982, Israeli-backed Lebanese Phalange forces committed a massacre. An Israeli commission found Israeli officers indirectly responsible, a key example of Israel being complicit in a mass atrocity. While not carried out by Israeli hands, the IDF controlled the area, allowing the militias in, and did not intervene, stopping the killings of hundreds, if not thousands. The First and Second Intifada responded to Palestinian terrorism. Israel had to defend its citizens from suicide bombings and attacks. Popular uprisings against a brutal and hopeless occupation. The Second Intifada saw a shift to armed resistance and horrific attacks on Israeli civilians, which Israel used to justify extreme collective punishment and military repression. Now we're on to part 4, which talks about the Gaza blockade. Israel quote-unquote disengaged from Gaza, removing all settlers and soldiers. The blockade is a necessary security measure to prevent Hamas, a designated terrorist organization sworn to Israel's destruction, from importing weapons. Gaza became an open-air prison. The blockade is a form of collective punishment that controls all movement of people and goods, crippling the economy and creating a humanitarian crisis, making life unlivable for 2.3 million people. There were major wars between 2008 and 2009, 2014, 2021, and most recently the one that started in 2023 and is ongoing. Israel does have the right to defend itself from rocket fire and terrorist attacks from Hamas. And Hamas has operated from civilian areas, which doesn't matter because Israel would bomb the shit out of those civilian areas anyway. Israel doesn't use super deep, convoluted military strategics. They just bomb highly populated areas and block food and aid from getting in. The insanely high civilian death toll and destruction of civilian infrastructure is proof, just downright flat evidence of genocidal intent. So part 5. Is this a genocide? I think you know what my answer is going to be. October 7th was a barbaric act of terrorism. The mass murder of roughly 1,200 Israelis and the taking of roughly 250 hostages. It was an existential threat that justifies a strong military response. A horrific, violent act of resistance born out of the desperation of 75 years of oppression and 16 years of blockade. It does not justify a genocidal response. A campaign of indiscriminate bombing and a ground invasion has killed over 34,000 Palestinians, mostly women and children. Not like mostly. It's like they're targeting them. They have destroyed over 60%. Do you understand that? Over 60% of civilian infrastructure and housing. Meaning, if this was happening to your country, your house would most likely be gone. Not there's a good chance, most likely. If you still lived in a home, you would be lucky. That isn't normal, and nothing justifies that. Literally nothing. You could tell me, you could make up the most horrific shit Hamas is doing, and it wouldn't justify dehousing innocent people. And Israel is pretty open about targeting civilians. That's what's funny. When people say, oh, well, they're not targeting civilians, then why the fuck are they saying they are? An Israel military leader said every baby in Gaza is our enemy. Rhetoric from practically the entire Israeli government and Netanyahu is that there are no uninvolved civilians, which basically means we should be able to kill whoever the fuck we want as long as they're Muslim and brown. They call, not Hamas, Palestinians human animals. This is all classic genocidal shit. They block aid in to stop it from getting to Hamas. And then they said, no, we'll deliver the aid ourselves, and then give them a fraction of what they need. Well, it's not their job to keep them safe, they're at war. Then don't block aid to all civilians, including women and children and elderly, you dumb donkey fuck? They're deliberately creating conditions of life calculated to bring about the physical destruction of the population, whether it be widespread starvation, disease, and collapse of their medical system. This entire timeline from 1948 to today are not isolated incidents, but a continuous process of the displacement, dispossession, and de-development of the Palestinian people. Here's my conclusion. My conclusion is a question that I'm gonna answer. Can a state founded on maintaining ethno-religious dominance over another people ever be peaceful and just? That question should answer itself. The truth is, a two-state solution is very wishful thinking. Because for a two-state solution to work, it implies that Israel has the capability to be peaceful, but they do not. This is what they are built upon. They are built upon ethno-religious tendencies and displacement. So, no, I don't believe a two-state solution is possible because I don't believe Israel will ever have it in them to be a peaceful nation. Supporters of Israel view it as a story of national rebirth and self-defense in the face of existential threats. And not only Israel, but here in America, because we're an ally, you're brainwashed into believing these things. And I have been very angry in this video, throughout this video, saying very mean things. And I need you to understand where I'm coming from. A lot of you are stupid. And that's okay. It's okay to be stupid. It's legal. You're allowed to be stupid. And most of the time, it's not entirely your fault. But it is up to you to stop being stupid. It's up to you to open your eyes and go, maybe what I've thought, even if I've thought this my entire life, even if I've went my whole life believing this one thing, maybe I'm wrong. That is a decision you have to make.